You betcha.
Okay, back with more in just a moment.
By New Leaf Natural Therapies, 94 Edith Street, Wynnum. Practitioners in naturopathy, kinesiology, live blood screening and natural fertility management. 3348 609.
Okay, let's hope that boat doesn't get a leak in it. So, what's happening this week with New Leaf?
So, well, given all the new information we got down at the conference on the weekend, one of the big areas I wanted to just quickly chat about this morning is a syndrome that people might not have heard about before. So it's called mast cell activation syndrome. Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of it?
Nope. Mast cell.
Well, the mast, M-A-S-T.
Okay,
so it's a white blood cell that releases histamine. Mm-hmm. So in injuries, in danger, in allergic situations, histamine's a really good thing. Mm. When it gets out of balance, it, no surprise, can cause problems in the body. Now, mast cells, basically, there's not a lot of way to diagnose this, which is why there's still a lot of arguing in medical circles about what the way to diagnose it is. But one of the things that people can do if they suspect, and I'll go through some of the symptoms in a minute because it's massive. One of the things that mast cells do when they're releasing histamine, so it can just be as simple as having asthma or allergies or sinus or hay fever, but it can also be having excruciating pain somewhere in the body. So unexplained abdominal pain or diarrhea all the time or hives, or actually I'll go through some of the symptoms because it is ridiculous, the study that is showing that it's linked into. So within the uterus, it can cause lots of painful periods. Within the gastrointestinal tract, diarrhea, stomach cramps, all sorts of things. It can actually go in and cause leukocytes, so it can be linked to leukemia. Anything to do with the bone marrow, it can really mess with. It can mess with, it's linked to POTS. So there's a syndrome called POTS, which I don't know whether you've ever heard of, POTS.
What, please?
Postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So basically people stand up and they feel weak. So they assume it's because of low blood pressure, but quite often it isn't. So this can actually be the mast cells affecting the cardiovascular system, so affecting the capillaries. So if your blood pressure, and this can be something you can check at home if you've got someone with you if you suspect it's you, but you do your blood pressure lying down and then you stand up, you do your blood pressure again. If there's a difference in 20 points, then that's a sign, not to mention the getting up and feeling woozy and dizzy, which of course can be lots of signs of cardiovascular disease and low iron and low oxygen and things. But certainly POTS is something, when people have it, they often know it. One of our clients months ago, I must contact her actually. But anyway, she would stress out every time she had to lie down on the table for a treatment with Rob or I, because she knew that when she lay down, she would almost faint. So it would cause such a difference. And some people might know someone like this. So it's not, and especially when quite often they're put on a lot of heart medication to try to get blood pressure under control, but that may not be the actual cause. And you can imagine, then they're just flailing around in the medical system, not quite knowing what to do. So anyway, POTS is linked in with it, lots of skin issues, lots of arrhythmias with the heart. It can link to hypertension or hypotension, vertigo, headaches, migraines. So, sort of affects us a lot if we have this issue. And what tends to cause it, the triggers are bizarre. So it can be anything from, and it can be instant. People can be fine one day and not the next with mast cell activation syndrome. So the syndromes, the triggers that they found can be all of a sudden you can be allergic to foods. It can be any supplements, it can be hormones, it can be opioids, lots of physical stuff. So traumas like, well, you can imagine. Trauma, let's just say trauma, we all know what that means. It can be cold or heat or pressure or odours, chemicals, insect bites, and environmental toxins once again. So basically any of those triggers can get into the body. The immune system doesn't know what to do with those things and starts releasing histamine, assuming that it's something bad. The histamine can end up, there's histamine cells or mast cells in every single tissue in your body. But if you accidentally get an infection in a tissue or get a environmental trigger in a tissue, then every time there's a hormonal fluctuation in your body, you can end up with pain in these body parts. So it's not the sort of thing if you get a scan or an MRI that they find. I was reading one lady, there was a testimonial by one lady, and hers was a 30-year history of trying to find the answers. And yes, she had lots of co-infections like Lyme disease and Epstein-Barr virus, glandular fever, and lots of other things going on in the background. So she'd been working on her immunity for a long time. But when she found the mast cell, one of the big things with mast cell activation syndrome, you've got to stop the foods which release histamine. And there's a very specific histamine-reducing diet. That's really important. Okay. And it's bizarre stuff that you would not imagine. Now, here's another one. A lot of, like with your diet, you know how we're all told to eat fermented foods. If you're a mast cell activator, so if you're an MCAS person, these foods are really bad for you. They actually release histamines in the body and can cause a lot of pain. And the diet has been being researched since about 2012. You know, so it's been being adjusted.
I'll tell you what I did a couple of weeks back, probably 3 weeks ago now. I made some pea and ham soup.
Yes.
And it was split peas and put it in the fridge. I should have frozen it straight away, and left it there for about 5 or 6 days. Then I had a couple of big bowls on the Saturday. Well, that Saturday night, the stomach cramps were unbelievable, and what had happened is the split peas had obviously fermented.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Interesting.
And I was not physically like sick as in vomiting or anything or diarrhoea, but the cramps in my stomach, it was unbelievable.
Yeah. So that could be these mast cells doing their job, you know, because what they're trying to do is break down undigested particles in the gut. And luckily, you haven't had any ongoing symptoms?
No, but it took a couple of days for me to get back to normal. But what I'm saying is that at my age, I learned a big lesson, and some of my friends said to me, you should have put that in little separate bowls, put it in the freezer, and that stops the fermentation. It can't sort of move on any further.
Yes.
Naturally, if you live there 6 or 12 months, that's a different story, but I can't get over the pain in the stomach. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
What have I eaten?
And you sort of, I mean, I know it's not a nice topic, but women with horrible menstrual periods, you know, where the pain is just excruciating. So sometimes, you know, naturopathically, we can try everything and just not get results that we get from 90% of our clients. Now, there's not a huge amount of people they suspect have this mast disorder. It's really less than 1% of the population. But you can imagine people with chronic illness, they're still looking for answers. And there's 4 different types of histamine. So there's H1, H2, HT, H4. If people are doing medications, which are very well known to reduce different types of histamine, you can imagine they end up being on a lot of medications. Things like, so just thinking about the natural sort of stuff that you can do, it's things like good old vitamin C. Ascorbic acid, quercetin, all of the bioflavonoids are really important. Vitamin B6 in an activated form. So activated B6s are really powerful. So what you need to be doing is thinking antihistamine. And once again, people might be self-medicating by accidentally taking olive leaf extract or activated B vitamins, you know, so people might be accidentally finding their groove with this, not even knowing they have the syndrome. But things like alpha-lipoic acid and N-acetylcysteine are really powerful because they are immune boosters, but they also sop up a lot of toxins in the bloodstream at the same time. So once again, you can imagine if you're just taking medications that are reducing the histamine, there's also a build-up of histamines and endocrine disruptors within the tissue in the body, and the drugs don't actually get rid of the built-up histamine, which once again means when there's a hormonal fluctuation or immune system fluctuation or a fluctuation in temperatures, colds, flus, bugs, you can end up with that pain in that area again if you're unlucky enough. So we've got to spend time releasing the histamine from the body, and once again, that's much more the natural therapy treatment rather than the doctors, which can treat the symptoms very, very well. In fact, one of the stories they told was with Benadryl. So Benadryl, of course, being a cough suppressant, and I remember it very, very well as a kid. So one of the doctors who was talking, Dr. Tanya Dempsey, who hopefully we'll have on the radio one day, she's a specialist in MCAS in America. And she was saying that when she first started working with MCAS about 10 years ago, she used to give her girls with painful periods Benadryl. Right. Now, I'm not suggesting that. There's a lot of alcohol in Benadryl, so obviously you just can't go crazy doses. But she actually found as a sort of an experiment that really did reduce that pain in some of these kids with these massive levels of histamine. So if people are getting there, it can be something to suggest with your doctor, or once again can ring New Leaf and have a chat to us about what to get your doctor to look for. Yeah. Because doctors won't have really heard of this unless they're specialists in endocrinology or in chronic fatigue or something like that. You know, I've mentioned lots of times my brother's a GP. I chatted to him about it the other night. So he'd never heard of the mast cell activation syndrome. He'd never really heard of the histamine levels, never tested as a GP, and he's a really good GP, so I just don't think it's going to be on their radar until, like me, you go to a seminar and you hear about it for 3 hours over 3 days. And then it's really exciting to go, maybe this is something else we can help our clients with.
It's hard, you know, of course doctors, not all doctors, but doctors might look upon this and they think, oh, these people are just crazy. I don't know what they think, because I'm not a doctor.
Well, one of the naturopaths I was sitting next with at the Congress, she sort of looked at it and she said, oh, this is going to be the next new thing they blame everything on. And maybe it will be a flash in the pan and not the be-all and end-all naturopathically. But I think if you've got a few key symptoms, like if you've got asthma or allergies or hayfever and you're getting dizzy every time you stand up, or you get welts or painful, you know, it's about putting together that picture and going, hey, there's something going on here. So you've got to have the knowledge first to be able to put together the picture. And, you know, and once again, my brother works really hard, but he doesn't have time to read all the articles. I'm sure he finds out a lot of the new stuff from me, probably, because I get excited about it.
I know, lately I've been sneezing a lot, so, you know, but it's obviously dust or different dust in the wind, which we're going to play pretty soon too, so we'll do that. Listen, before we forget, just very quickly, let's just go back. We had a call from Mr. Donald, and he just mentioned very quickly about vinegar. We forgot to just quickly...
So I think, because he mentioned that vinegar and water can be used for cleaning windows and cleaning bench tops and toilets and all sorts of things. And I think this is the thing, you know, with natural ingredients like that aren't causing any damage, what can you swap over in your home so you've got less chemicals? You know, what more naturally can you use in your makeups and your hair colouring? Hey, Rusty, next time you go get the bleach, you know, bleach blondies. People pay for that colour.
I mentioned that I worked in the meat industry, and of course, you know, the butcher shops always had to have really nice glistening glass. And Mr. Donald mentioned that he cleans glass. Well, I thought that vinegar would smear it. But we used to use methylated spirits and water with just the tiniest dash of liquid detergent, something like a
Yeah, right.
And I don't mean a squirt, I mean just the tiniest little.
Yeah.
And that used to work wonders. So methylated spirits is virtually 100% alcohol, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So people who are sensitive to alcohol would have an issue with that. And you know, you can smell it. It's like when you open up Nico pens and that sort of thing. Some people are highly sensitive to the toxins in those things.
But you know, the alcohol, straight alcohol, would dissipate in methane.
It does. But if you're doing it on the inside and you're using lots of it, then it takes a while and it will end up...
If you used it on a carpet, would get it absorbed into the carpet.
Yeah, that's right.
Fibre, different thing. But anyway,
once again, kids crawling around on the ground.
No. Just thought we'd mention that about Mr. Donald that rang up, and thanks for that, Mr. Donald. I think I don't think his name was Duck, it was just Donald.
But I think the big takeaway is, like, I know it sounds awful when you think about all the plastics and environmental toxins and everything, but it's about keeping our bodies up and running. You know, when you get symptoms, talking to your doctor, talking to your naturopath, have a team of people behind you who are trying to work to find that solution for you. Because you can imagine there's so much depression in people with chronic illness because they can't find solutions. And when they find that little bit of hope, sometimes that's exactly what they need, so that they can go, okay, I've tried 1,000 diets, I haven't tried the low histamine diet, maybe this is something I can something I can do. And as a general rule, if you do a particular diet for a month and it hasn't done anything, it's not the right diet. You know, so I think that's something to really keep in mind. You know, it may not be the thing for you, but if you've got high histamine levels in your testing, how do they do it? Blood or urine? I can't remember. But it's something, I did do a blog on it this morning, so I was up early. Anyway, so basically that's one of the few things that we can do here in Australia. Many of the tests they can get in the US, but we just don't have them here. But nonetheless, with Georgia and I doing kinesiology, we can muscle test for things like the histamine and the individual factors associated with the MCAS. With the live blood screening, we can actually look at the white blood cells and see how activated they are and how toxic the body looks. So there are a few ways we can sort of determine, as well as the history. The history is always huge.
Do you deal with diets at New Leaf?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
So it's part of your, I suppose...
Training? Yes. Yeah, so you can't be a naturopath without being a nutritionist. Right. So we're not dietitians, because that's sort of the AMA... they still follow the AMA triangle. So nutritionists sort of work quite differently.
If somebody comes to see you and they've got some problems here, the diet that you give them is not something that you've concocted out of your head. It's textbook style diet? Or
Not necessarily, because we also use kinesiology to work out what they've got going on. So someone might be, say, FODMAP sensitive, so they might be having bloating, burping, belching, wind, flatulence when they eat certain foods. We might try them on a FODMAP diet, which is a low fermentable sugar diet. We might do that for, say, 2, 4, 6 weeks. But Georgia and I, because we're both naturopaths and kinesiologists, we would muscle test up the best diet for them. And absolutely, we use other people's brains to make up the...
So it's horses for courses.
It is, but you have to work out which one. Do they need to be gluten-free or casein-free or dairy-free or lactose-free or, histamine-free? It really is a whirlwind out there. And for us, the kinesiology really makes a big difference. We can get people to spend hundreds of dollars and go get testing and actually check their foods to intolerances. You can do that. There's another test that's actually about $1,500. I've never once prescribed it, but I've had several of my clients go and do it for their own knowledge, where it actually finds out what foods are activated, pretty much this mast cell activation syndrome, I would guess, what white blood cells are basically falling apart when you have certain foods in your diet. So the foods are so damaging that your white blood cells can't cope with them.
Cool. Well, Madonna, sadly, we've run out of time.
Yeah.
It's getting very close to midday, and we've got the midday news coming up, so thanks so much.
No worries.
And I'll probably be with you for a couple more weeks until Mr. Rod
Yeah.
gets back. He called us in the other day. We had him live on air.
Oh, cool.
He said to say hi.
Did he have a Belgian accent?
He's starting to get one.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, Belgian belly from all that Belgian beer. Glass bottles. He was getting into trouble.
They're stronger, the Belgian beers too. They're like 7 to 10%.
He said that all these beautiful glasses that he was trying to put in his bag and bring home. All right, thanks, Madonna. Excellent stuff. See you again next week.
Wonderful.
Have a good weekend.
Will do.
Get over this. What's his name again?
Flavio.
Okay, we'll be back with more in just a moment.